Hello, my name's host Eric. I'm here with host Zachary and famous person Alex. And in the chatting area, we've got a couple of other people, Fire Skies and Lorenz Barker. Welcome. Tonight we're talking about History Dinner, where we go back in time and meet with history person. I have said I would like to talk about Robert Pirsig and also the issue of quality. Hmm, a good one. Alex, I was excited to hear that you had read that book and referenced it. It's a hugely influential book in my personal history as well. I read it multiple times when I was between the ages of 16 and 20.
In the book?
The name's the art Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig.
I've heard of it, I haven't read it.
Alex, you're off. Your mic's off, or I'm not hearing you anyway. Anybody else hearing him?
Mm-mm.
We're still not hearing you, Alex.
Give us a little summary about what it's about here while we wait for.
Okay, sure. Well, Alex is figuring this out. It's an interesting book. It's a philosophy book that's half philosophy and half story. It's about a main character who's basically the author. It's sort of autobiographical. And he's raising a son. And he's also recently come out of a mental institution of some sort. That he's been, that he's not, that he's so philosophy-ish that basically he's kind of driven himself crazy. And he goes throughout the book, talks about trying to understand what quality is, among other things. Trying to solve the complicated matter of object-subject duality, and simultaneously traveling across the country on motorcycles on a motorcycle with his son, and part of the time he travels with some other people, I think, too. And it's been a while since I've read it, but
It sounds really interesting.
yeah, it really is. One of the divisions he makes, he talks about people being in the classical or the romantic style, and an example, and he tends to exemplify everything with motorcycle stuff, right? An example of the difference between the classical and the romantic style, he talks about his friends who have motorcycles, but they're romantic style. And so when there's a problem with it, they have very fancy motorcycles, like German motorcycles. And there's a problem with it. He's like, oh, well, I can fix that with, it just needs a shim, I think he said it was called. And it's just a sliver of metal. And he's like, oh, I can make that out of this aluminum can, no problem. And they're like, oh, no, we can't possibly have that on our bikes because. And so they go down to the dealership and buy an official, same exact thing that he would have made out of the aluminum can because they're concerned about things that are not logical, but that are issues of form rather than function. So basically, he makes the distinction between people who prioritize form and people who prioritize function as classical and romantic. Vice versa. Those who prioritize function are classical thinkers. So, additionally, in the book, he says stuff about. One of the things I really identified with was the part where he says he struggles with his own response to other people's ideas and ideas that he encounters in college and stuff like that. He talked about how he had a hard time not approaching anything he read like a chess player trying to find ways to attack it. For me, that was extremely resonant, and his expressing like it was important for him to learn to find things that were of value as well as simply attacking stuff, was something that I think influenced me probably substantially. Helped me to um, process the experience of being adversarial in nature towards ideas with the concurrent process of being TI in my second slot and wanting things to be logically consistent.
I really
I,
want to read this book now. That sounds really like something I would really be into.
I bet you would. Alex, are you audible now? No. We still can't hear you, Alex. For one thing, your mic's up here. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Oh, okay. Um. Well, one one thing I would like to ask Robert Pirsig, if I could. I don't know if he might even still be alive. He did cool. He did write a sequel book that I also read that was quite good too, but it was much more of a story and much less philosophy. Um, And no, it's a very serious book. It's quite a long book and it's quite expansive in its explication of issues of duality and the nature of quality. He's particularly interested in, it's one of the things that got me prompted so much into aesthetic relativism. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Um, so he he made me think a lot about quality. And I remember there were sections of that book that I read 4 or 5 times, 6 times in a row, trying to understand them and not really understanding them. And I would love to reread it now because I think I might be able to understand them a lot better now. I probably would. In particular, his idea of where is quality. The quality exists, but where does it exist? If it's just subjective, what does that mean? To reduce something to being just subjective, is that somehow less meaningful than um, an alternate approach, I guess?
It seems to me the only way to really garner an objective view of aesthetic experience or even art in general is you have to contextualize it into certain purposes. Like once you identify a purpose, then you can hold it to an objective standard to reach that purpose, right? But then, is the purpose of art to be objective? Is the purpose of anything or like of
Well,
any
he wasn't
aesthetic
talking
experience?
necessarily, he wasn't talking really about art. He was talking about quality in objects like, okay, this knife is better than this cheap, shitty knife. This good knife is better than this cheap, shitty knife. What does that mean? It would seem to be superior in ways, this, which gets to your essence thing. It would seem to be superior in ways beyond just subjective opinion.
Well, it would be superior in like depending on the knife, like how it would be utilized, right? Or am I
This
misunderstanding you?
thing working now? Sorry.
Yeah, it's working. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Okay,
let's say
so
you're talking about two knives that are the same kind of knife, basically, and one of them's made really cheaply, and one of them is made really well. Um, there's more to it
no,
than, and they might both have equal utility for the purpose. If you're going to use the knife one time to cut a lemon in half, each knife might be equally useful, and yet we would deem that there's some quality in the better, more carefully made knife that's been somehow imbued in it by the fact that the person who made it cared a lot and put a lot of effort and time into it and was concerned about the details of the making of it. So he challenges this idea of quality by trying to find basically um, some means of satisfying his intuitive sense that those two objects are distinct in meaningful ways that aren't linked to their utility. He wanted to reconcile that with the apparent reduction of saying something's just subjective.
Well, I mean, I think you can extend that to art. No.
Well, sure, but I think it's easier for us to. It's harder for us to dismiss when we're talking about an object because we can understand
That's true.
that there's much broader consensus. This is a good knife. That's a shitty knife.
uh,
Any thoughts on this, Alex?
I took it. I read the book like once or twice all the way through, and like a couple of times halfway through when I'd set it down and get distracted by other things. But what I took from it was that he had an idea that there's a sense of quality that predates logic, that comes before logic, that you have an idea of what's good and bad, right and wrong, before you ever get to the point of reducing it through logical processes. And that was, to me, was so foreign, and it was very. It took. I had to, that's why I had to read it so many times to get the grip, the gist of what the guy was bringing to the table. It it made me question the fundamental way I think, because I've always thought about A equals A or B, how things logically fit together, how the system fits together, but what makes the pieces and the system before you make the pieces in the system. Just the innate quality in itself as it is to be human. And that was, it was heavy. It was, that book was one of the most heavy pieces of reading I've done, but the most satisfying at the end, especially after my second trip through. It made me question. It made me question it myself and have an understanding of that the dichotomy between Eastern and Western thinking. It if you haven't read it before, I can't yell it from the
I definitely want to
rooftops
read
loud
it now.
enough. Read it.
I'm so hyped now. I'm just like, oh my god, how haven't I heard of this? Like,
It had absolutely equivalent impact on me, and I had an absolutely equivalent experience reading it, which is to say, it's one of the few books that I could not read it quickly at all. It
I
just,
feel like that's every philosophy book for me.
but
I
see,
have to
it's
reread
isn't
things
a,
constantly.
it's weird. It's not a straight philosophy book. It's not. It's a story, and part of the storyline is him reading things, heavy, dense things, to his kid, and reading to him
It's
really
almost
slowly.
it's almost like a Buddhist koan. It's you're telling a story over way over here in left field to get to a point that's way over in the right field. It, it's it, it's one of those things that after the first few chapters, you're probably going to be banging your head on the wall, going, "What the hell is this guy's talking about?" And when you get halfway through, then you're there. You're pulled in, and you're not going to put it down. You're like, I'm freaking figuring this out. I'm going to read the rest of this and understand it. And that's about the point to where he's talking about the trip back to college, when he was talking about when he was teaching, and the effect when he was in the polling his students, and that it really starts to draw you in. What really, one of the most powerful things that I my personal takeaway from it was, of course, motorcycles I'm naturally interested in, but when he was talking about how some things you just have to push through, and and at the while he's throwing this heavy philosophical stuff at you, and it's kind of told in the system of the story of, you've got to push through this hike, you got to keep going. Yeah, we can't sit down and whine, we got to keep going.
Gumption traps.
And you think he's talking to his kid, but he's talking to you as the reader, saying, no, you got to stick with this to understand where I'm getting you to. It's
Which is why he's got
awesome.
that. It's just why he's got that slow read to his kid shit in there too. He's teaching
Yeah,
us how to think about how to read his book as we're reading it.
yeah, that's a very good synopsis.
I'm very intrigued now. I really want to check out this book.
You won't. The other thing
And
is, you'll be confused. You will be
Mm-hmm.
confused. Like in the middle,
Absolutely.
you're like, well, who is this? Who is this person? Who is that person? And I don't understand what's going on. You
Yeah,
will be like that, but it's
I think
okay.
that
That's why he's
I
there
think
to
that
try to say, like, come on, don't fall into the gumption traps. You got holding on gumption traps. How you're trying to do something and you think it's going to be, you expect it to be this, and then it fails to meet that expectation, and you fall into the trap where you don't want to do it anymore, and you just have to. And how do you have to metacognate out of that? That was like, whoa, oh my God, somebody understands me a little bit here. And they give me,
yeah.
not only do they
And stop.
understand my problem, but they give me a solution too.
Yep. Stop letting your ego get in the way. Follow me. Put your ego over there. Come on, come on. Leave your ego alone. Ignore that. That's bullshit anyway. Come on.
Like,
Is
Right, and the part when he's saying like, oh, and how he used to try to attack ideas like from a chess master perspective,
Hmm.
he's telling me, you don't have to do that right now.
Yep.
See, that's so interesting because like that's my first go. I'm thinking about that as we're talking about it. Like I think that's how NTPs operate. Where it's
It's
like,
straight up the most NTP book ever.
Hmm. Oh yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
don't know if he's I or E, but he is NTP.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really need to read this book now.
I mean, even the way his interactions with his two writing buddies, the wife or the his buddy and his buddy's wife, and the interactions that then the emotions he felt from dealing with him. I'm like, that's me. I don't want to listen to that whining shit. Shut the hell up. But he still ties it into the bigger picture of what he's dealing with, and the way
What the
even
fuck?
even the difficulty as a parent and the way he was dealing with his son and both wanting to help him, but at the same time going, quit being a pussy and come on, is like, holy cow, that
And
dude
it,
is in my damn head.
and the kid's stomach aches and shit, you know? Remember the kid's stomach
Yeah,
aches?
yeah, and whining about he's tired and he wants his food but won't eat, and and
Right.
and all that. Had the diarrhea on the hike, and he's like, yeah, just you just got to deal with it and all that. It was,
It's and when you're talking about it now, I'm having these sudden like revelations about the book that I haven't read in 20 or 30 years. Like, well, obviously these people
mm,
are different components of the NTP psyche, and that at some point is made clear late in the book when Phaedrus, you realize, I'm not going to do any spoilers,
mm-hmm,
but
right. That's
it's
pretty.
like,
I don't know if that's really a spoiler. You kind of figure that out in the first chapter or two,
I
anyway,
didn't.
or
I
inside
didn't
the.
figure it out until, like, remember, the first time I read it, I
Oh,
was like 15 or 16. I totally didn't
I
figure it out.
almost, I almost want to ask you to clarify what you just said, but I don't want to because I just want to
Yeah,
pass
yeah,
on
yeah.
my
yeah,
mind
yeah.
experience.
I didn't figure it out.
I,
Go.
I don't know if it's too much of a spoiler, but if so, you can discuss me later. Just think it's Fight Club. It's kind of like that.
You know what? It is kind of like that. It is a spoiler. You just spoiled it. But I mean, the thing is, I bet you probably wouldn't. You probably would get that right away anyway. Probably. I didn't when I read it, but it was like the first thing like that I'd ever read. It was. I never. I
Mm.
actually still haven't read anything like it since. I
Yeah,
kind of.
I can't compare another book to it either. I can't.
I don't read many novels. That's what like I rarely
Me
read
neither.
novels.
Anymore. I don't either anymore.
It's it's only the borderline of a novel. It's like,
Yeah, that's why it sounds interesting because like it sounds like it's a novel I can enjoy and genuinely gain a
Yeah.
unique understanding from.
Get it. I'm
the
gonna go
story
get it. I'm gonna go get another copy of it. I gotta read it again now.
the story is a distraction from what the real meat of the thing is. The story about the whole travels, and that's a kind of a nice little side journey to take the weight off your head, because it is a heavy, heavy book, and it's one of those things where you're going, oh, all right, this is freaking awesome.
But I think the
At the
thing is
end,
the
I'm like,
story. The
holy
stories
cow.
is the philosophy too. It's all like woven together. You know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's woven together intricately, but I believe the only reason it's there is to take the weight off of it to get you to read it. And of course, my dumbass, the reason I'm picking it up is because I'm an avid motorcyclist. So I'm like, ooh, motorcycle maintenance. Yeah, this might be interesting. Zen, yeah, I kind of like to understand about the Buddha side of things. Let me check this out. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I can't put this shit down.
So is there a
And
I
lot of Buddha stuff in here?
not really.
not dir- no, not no. At least not in a direct manner. Not any.
He's basically
It's
saying
all.
he is basically saying things like, it's very in retrospect it seems very set completion oriented to me. He's about completing sets and um and the processes of doing that. It's about process and how he is trying to figure out a process that allows him to both be in the moment and experience what he's doing and give it his full attention and achieve quality in that regard, you know? Because there is a human experience of,
Yep.
are you half-assing something or not, you know? And there's that element that goes with that whole thing comes
It
through in the
sounds like
story.
the way you guys describe this sounds like it's ideal to read at this time in my life
Yeah,
because I'm at the
now's the
point where
time.
I can understand it. Plus
I read it a
the
little
sort
too
of
young.
like the sort of
Yeah, I
like
read it probably a little too old for it to do me as good, much good. Yeah,
I read it too young. You right now is perfect for you.
yeah.
I definitely need to check this book out though. It sounds really fun, like or it sounds really intriguing, you know, from what you guys describe of it. It sounds like something that's straight up my alley.
Well, Hoter gives it 10 stars. Perfect recommendation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If I got 10 fingers, yeah.
You get all the stars. That's all the stars you can get for a book. 20 stars total from 2 different people. So highly recommended. Thanks for watching this episode of Talking with Famous People. I hope it was as enjoyable as watching as it was talking about. I really enjoyed talking about this.